Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are looking into how to not just survive, but actually thrive in times of massive change.
I like that. Survive and thrive.
Right. It feels like things are changing faster than ever these days.
Definitely a feeling of constant upheaval.
So, to guide us through this, we are turning to Shaman Jon Rasmussen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's got this blog called The Soul Algorithm.
Okay.
It's a really interesting blend of ancient shamanic wisdom, a lot of it inspired by the Quero people of the Andes,
Oh.
and then kind of practical advice for navigating the modern world.
I like that combination. Bringing the ancient wisdom into the present day.
Yeah, exactly. So get ready to unpack some big questions.
Okay. Like what?
Like, what is this Pachacooty everyone keeps talking about?
Yeah, good question.
And is the American dream, as we know it, even sustainable anymore?
Ooh, yeah. That's a big one.
Big questions.
Those are definitely at the core of Rasmussen's work, for sure.
Okay, so let's start with the Pachacooty.
Right.
What is that exactly?
It's interesting, when you look at it from the Quero perspective, they've been talking about these massive shifts, these Pachacooties, for centuries.
Mm.
They see it as like an era of upheaval,
Okay.
where everything gets shaken up, old structures crumble,
Wow.
and a new world emerges.
So it's not just some abstract concept.
What?
It's happening right now to all of us.
Exactly. And that's where this whole question of the American dream comes in.
Okay, so how does that fit in with this idea of the Pachacooty?
Well, Rasmussen really challenges this idea of constant accumulation as like the path to happiness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the idea that more is always better.
Exactly.
Mhm.
He uses this example of like a stressed out upper middle class family
Okay.
who are constantly striving for more. A bigger house, a fancier car, more
Mm.
status,
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses.
Totally. Even though they already have like more than enough to meet their basic needs.
But it's that feeling of never having enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always needing to keep up.
Always chasing that next level. And I think a lot of us can relate to that pressure, right?
Absolutely.
That pressure to achieve, to acquire,
Yeah.
to constantly be striving for something more.
Like it's never enough.
But if it's not actually making us happier, then what's the point?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's what Rasmussen wants us to ask ourselves. Like, what if this whole pursuit of more, what if it's actually a distraction
A distraction from what?
from what truly matters?
Oh, interesting.
What if it's preventing us from connecting with like the things that bring genuine joy and fulfillment?
Okay.
And it's not just about material possessions. It's also about this illusion of control that we often cling to.
What do you mean by that? The illusion of control.
This belief that technology or like some divine intervention will just swoop in and save us
Oh, I see.
from the consequences of our actions,
Okay.
We think, if I just get that promotion, if I buy that bigger house, if I find that perfect partner, then everything will be okay.
It's that if-then thinking.
Yeah. But Rasmussen's arguing that we can't just rely on external forces to fix things.
So we can't just sit back and wait for a miracle.
Exactly.
We have to take responsibility for our own lives.
This Pachacooty, it's like a wake-up call.
A wake-up call to what?
To take responsibility for our choices and to adapt to the changing reality around us.
Okay, so that's a pretty sobering thought.
It is.
Where do we even begin? How do we actually thrive in the midst of all this change? It feels kind of overwhelming.
It's definitely a lot to process.
Yeah.
But Rasmussen does offer a practical framework.
Okay.
And he says it starts with finding that, like, sweet spot of complexity in our lives.
Sweet spot of complexity. What does that even mean?
So it's like not oversimplifying things to the point of boredom,
Okay, that makes sense.
but also not taking on so much that we're constantly overwhelmed and stressed out.
So finding that balance.
Exactly. He talks about living within our means.
Okay, so is he talking about, like, budgeting our money?
It's more than that. It's about recognizing our limits,
Our limits in what way?
physically, energetically,
Yeah.
psychologically,
Oh,
even in terms of our impact on the planet's resources.
so it's not just about money. It's about everything.
It's about asking ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
are the choices I'm making sustainable for myself and for the world around me?
That's a great question.
Am I taking on more than I can handle? Am I constantly, like, burning the candle at both ends?
Yeah, pushing ourselves to the point of exhaustion.
Exactly.
It's not about deprivation. It's about making conscious choices.
Yes. Conscious choices that align with our values.
Our values and our capacity.
You got it. And that leads into his next point, which is decluttering our lives.
Oh, decluttering. I think we can all relate to that.
Right.
Our homes, our schedules, our minds. Sometimes it feels like we're drowning in stuff.
Totally.
Is he saying we should all become minimalists?
Not necessarily,
Yeah.
but he highlights this powerful connection between excess stuff and stress. He says physical clutter often mirrors, like, mental clutter.
Oh, that makes sense.
And letting go of things we don't truly need can create space. Freedom.
So both physical possessions and commitments.
Exactly. Anything that drains our energy.
It's about creating that breathing room.
Yes, simplifying.
Getting rid of the excess baggage.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
I love that. All right, so next in his framework, he calls it focusing on core experiences.
Okay, focusing on core experiences. What does that even mean?
He uses this example of someone striving for, like, financial independence.
Okay.
On the surface, they're like, I want all the money in the world so I can travel or pursue my passions.
Yeah, that's a common goal.
But he encourages us to go deeper, to ask, what is the core experience I'm actually seeking?
Oh, I see. So maybe it's not about the money itself. It's
Yeah.
about the freedom it represents.
Yes, or the ability to travel and experience new things. Or maybe it's about the joy of creative expression.
Or the satisfaction of a meaningful career.
Exactly. You got it.
So find those core experiences and access them directly.
Even if you don't have all the external trappings you think you need.
I love that. Find fulfillment in the present moment,
Yes.
rather than constantly chasing after some future ideal.
Love it.
It's asking, what brings me joy right now?
Yes.
And how can I have more of that in my life?
Beautiful.
So what's next in the framework?
This is a powerful one. The power of relationships.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Right. He says they are the foundation of creation itself.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. But think about it.
Okay.
Everything we experience in life is filtered through our relationships.
So he's not just talking about romantic relationships.
No. He's talking about our connections with everyone.
Okay, like who?
Friends, family, community, nature.
Even our relationship with ourselves.
Exactly. He sees them as the source of our deepest joy,
Wow.
our greatest challenges, and ultimately our greatest opportunities for growth and transformation.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about it that way. It's through our relationships that we experience the full spectrum of human emotion.
Yes, the contrasts.
The contrast that allows us to appreciate the beauty and the depth of life.
Beautifully said. He even compares life to a grand theater,
Oh, I like that.
where we're all just actors playing our parts,
Okay.
interacting with each other, creating this amazing drama of existence.
And just like in a play, the quality of the performance depends on the relationships between the actors.
You got it.
So if there's trust and respect, the performance will be powerful and moving.
Totally.
But if there's tension and conflict, the whole thing falls apart.
Exactly.
This is getting very philosophical.
It is, and that's what makes his work so fascinating. He blends these ancient spiritual teachings with practical advice.
Yeah, for navigating the challenges of modern life.
Exactly. So relationships, remember how Rasmussen called them the foundation of creation itself?
Yeah, it's a pretty big statement.
It is, and he really drives that point home.
Yeah.
When you stop and think about it, almost every experience we have is shaped by our relationships. Our relationship with ourselves, with other people, our work, even with the planet.
It's all interconnected.
It is. And Rasmussen argues that
Yeah.
it's within those relationships that we truly come alive. It's where we experience the full spectrum of human emotions.
Okay, so he's talking about the good and the bad.
The light and the shadow, the joy and the sorrow. It's that contrast that gives life its depth, its meaning, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so it's not about
Yeah.
striving for some picture-perfect existence where everything is always happy and harmonious.
Definitely not. It's about embracing the messiness, the challenges. They're all part of the journey.
Okay, I'm starting to see what you mean.
Right. And that's what I think is so refreshing about his approach.
Yeah.
He's not offering, like, a quick fix
Right.
or a set of rules to follow. He's just inviting us to look at our relationships with more honesty, more compassion, and a willingness to do the inner work.
So where do we even begin with this inner work?
That's a great question. He starts with the most fundamental relationship of all,
Oh, okay. Which is...
the one we have with ourselves.
Ah, that makes sense. You can't really connect with others if you haven't connected with yourself first.
Exactly. Like trying to build a house on a shaky foundation.
Perfect analogy.
Right. So this inner work
Yeah.
involves cultivating self-awareness, self-compassion, and a deep understanding of our own needs and values.
Our motivations.
Yes, our motivations. It's about recognizing our strengths and our weaknesses, our light and our shadow, and accepting it all with kindness.
So it's not about striving for some, like,
Yeah.
idealized version of
No,
ourselves.
not at all. It's about embracing our imperfections, our quirks, the things that make us uniquely us.
Right.
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend.
That's powerful. It's so easy to be critical of ourselves,
Oh, yeah.
to focus on the flaws, the shortcomings. But what if we shifted our perspective?
Right.
What if we started treating ourselves with more gentleness and compassion?
That's the key. It's not about denying our challenges or pretending that everything is always rosy. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Yeah, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Exactly. And once we've established this foundation of self-love, then we can extend that love outward to others.
And that includes not just romantic partners and close friends, right?
Yeah.
He's talking
And
about
everyone.
family,
Everyone.
colleagues, even strangers we meet on the street.
Absolutely. Every interaction is an opportunity
Okay.
to practice compassion, kindness, understanding.
I think this is where it gets really challenging.
Yeah, it can be.
It's easy to be kind and compassionate to people we like and agree with, but
Yeah.
what about the people who push our buttons?
Right.
Who hold different beliefs?
Totally.
Who maybe even are unkind to us? How do we apply this principle in those situations?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
And Rasmussen acknowledges that. He's not saying we have to become best friends with everyone
Right.
or condone hurtful behavior,
Of course.
but he challenges us to shift our perspective, to move away from what can I get from this person
Okay.
to how can I contribute to their well-being,
Even if
even if it's just a small act of kindness or understanding.
it's not about changing the other person, it's about changing our own attitude and approach.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean we have to be doormats.
Right.
We don't have to allow ourselves to be mistreated. It's about finding that balance,
Balance between what?
setting healthy boundaries,
Okay.
but maintaining an open heart.
Speaking of boundaries, I think a lot of people struggle with that,
Absolutely.
especially in relationships.
Yeah.
How do we know when to hold firm and when to bend?
It's a delicate dance. There's no easy answer.
Right.
But Rasmussen says setting boundaries is not about shutting people out. It's not about building walls.
Okay.
It's about honoring our own needs and limits while still remaining open to connection.
So it's not about saying, like, I never want to talk to you again.
Right.
It's more about...
It's more like, I need some space right now.
More.
I'm not comfortable with that behavior.
Yeah.
It's about being clear about our expectations
Yeah.
and communicating them electively.
Yeah.
And sometimes those conversations can be uncomfortable, but it's much better to address issues head on
Right.
than to let resentment fester.
I think a lot of us avoid those tough conversations.
We do.
Because we're afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
We don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. But those unspoken issues can cause more damage in the long run.
Absolutely. And Rasmussen reminds us that healthy relationships require honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to have those tough conversations.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Even when it's uncomfortable. And this leads into another key aspect of his approach to relationships: forgiveness.
Forgiveness. That's a tough one.
It is.
It can be so hard to let go of hurt and resentment,
It can.
especially when we feel wronged. Is he saying we should just forget about the past and pretend nothing bad happened?
No, not at all. Forgiveness is not about condoning hurtful behavior. It's not about letting people off the hook. It's about recognizing that we're all human.
We make mistakes.
We make mistakes. And holding on to anger and resentment only hurts us.
It's like that saying, drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we forgive? Especially when the wounds are still fresh.
Yeah. How do we do that?
It's a process. It takes time.
Okay.
And it often requires us to revisit those painful memories, those emotions, multiple times
Okay.
before we can truly let them go. Rasmussen suggests we start by acknowledging the hurt,
Okay.
allow ourselves to feel the anger and sadness,
Right.
and then gradually we can shift our focus to understanding and compassion.
So it's not about denying or suppressing our feelings. It's about
No.
working through them in a healthy way.
Exactly. And remember,
Yeah.
forgiveness is not just about forgiving others. It's about forgiving ourselves too.
Oh, that's so important. We can be so hard on ourselves.
We can. Holding on to past regrets, beating ourselves up for things we can't change.
It's a common pattern.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's not helpful. When we can forgive ourselves and others,
Yeah.
it creates space for healing, for growth, for deeper connection. It allows us to break free from the past
Yeah.
and create a more loving present.
This is all making a lot of sense, but it feels like there's still a piece missing.
Oh, what's that?
If relationships are so important, how do we make sure we're choosing the right ones?
Ah, good question.
How do we avoid those toxic dynamics that just drain us?
Right, that leave us feeling depleted.
Exactly.
That's a great question and something we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
So we're back, and we've been really getting deep into Shaman Jon Rasmussen's work.
Yeah, his framework for thriving, especially during these crazy times of change.
It's fascinating stuff. We talked about the Pachacudi, remember that?
Yeah, that whole world upheaval thing.
And how maybe the classic American dream isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Right, constantly chasing more doesn't always equal happy.
But for me, what really stuck out was his focus on relationships.
Yeah, he doesn't mess around with that. It's like the core of everything.
It's not just like some nice bonus. He sees it as essential to thriving.
Exactly. Especially when everything around us feels shaky.
And it's not about, having tons of friends or being super popular.
No, it's deeper than that.
It's about the quality of those connections, right?
100%.
Yeah.
He talked about honesty, being vulnerable, even forgiveness.
Yeah, the tough stuff.
The stuff that really makes a relationship strong, though.
But at the end of the last part, you left us with a question.
Oh, right. About choosing the right relationships.
Exactly. How do we make sure we're not getting sucked into, like, toxic dynamics, the
Ah.
kind that just drain our energy?
Ah, yes. Crucial question. Rasmussen says it starts with that self-love foundation we discussed earlier.
Right. Knowing our worth.
When we truly get that, we're less likely to put up with relationships that are bad for us.
Makes sense. But it can be so hard to walk away, especially if it's family or a really long-time friend.
It could be really tough. Rasmussen says sometimes the most loving thing for ourselves and the other person is to create some distance.
So not necessarily cutting them off completely?
Not always, no. But maybe limiting contact, being firmer with our boundaries, even getting professional help to sort things out.
Okay, so sometimes you need a little help navigating those conversations.
Sometimes it's necessary.
But choosing wisely is only one part of it, right? We have to nurture the good relationships too.
Absolutely. Rasmussen talks about being present, really listening, really hearing what the other person is saying.
Showing up with an open heart.
Exactly. Trying to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree. Making an effort to spend quality time together, celebrate each other's wins, offer support when things are tough.
It's like actively creating a space where everyone feels seen and appreciated.
And safe, too.
Safe, yes. Which loops back to his whole thriving framework. When we have those strong connections, we can face our fears, bounce back from setbacks, and really go after our dreams.
It's like having your own personal cheer squad, reminding you how awesome you are.
Love that. And remember those 6 human needs we talked about before?
From Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, contribution.
Yeah, it felt a little random at the time.
I know, but now I see how it fits.
Rasmussen is so clever with how he ties it all together. He's not saying those needs are bad or that we shouldn't want them met.
Okay, so what is he saying?
He's saying that when we only try to meet those needs externally,
Like, through achievements or possessions or what other people think of us?
exactly, it never really satisfies. There's always that emptiness.
So it's about finding healthy ways to get those needs met.
Ways that feel good and make a difference in our lives. And that's where the relationships come in.
I'm starting to see it. So, like, when we feel truly loved and secure in our relationships.
Boom. Certainty and connection needs met.
And when people around us challenge us, but in a good way, and support us.
There's your growth and significance boost.
And if we're actively contributing to other people's well-being.
We feel purposeful, like we're part of something bigger.
Wow, it's like all those needs are woven into those close relationships.
They really are. That's what makes his work so powerful. He takes these huge ideas and makes them relatable.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Shaman Jon Rasmussen's world, I want to leave everyone with one last thought.
Okay, shoot.
He kept saying relationships are the foundation of creation. What does that actually mean for you, for your life? How can you bring more love, more connection, more meaning to your relationships starting right now?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's a big one. Maybe it'll even spark a little Pachacudi of your own.
A personal revolution. I like it. And if you're ready to go deeper, Check out Rasmussen's blog.
The soul algorithm.
It might just change your whole perspective. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.